Hi everyone, welcome to IASP 520, Data Mining and Knowledge Discovery. That is official course title, but we're going to focus on machine learning and deep learning. I'm Professor Yoon. This is my phone number and office Mayor Hall 114. Office hours are listed here, so you can choose any of those three time slots, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Mondays and Wednesdays at the Manhattan campus. Tuesdays, the Topsbury, Westchester campus for each different time frame. Data mining and knowledge discovery is well known and widely used terminologies. So I think each one of you have some specific expectations. Um, so this course, not just using the tools, but sometimes we're going to code from scratch or from importing some other packages to improve, enhance some of the learning modules that, or as you wish. Prerequisite for this course is a Python language or some capabilities about coding. Upon the completion of this course, you may be able to collect and compile data, analyze large data sets, and use techniques to classify and develop algorithms and prototype the algorithms and apply to a real world mining domain. So that outcome aligned with the program learning outcomes, as you can see here. Textbooks, there's no textbook required, but some of the recommendations. Um, uh, this is the first book is the book that I published in 2021, a little bit older, but it contains lots of Python codings. Or you can get other textbooks here. I believe that you can see here, mining and massive data sets, right? Uh, Written by Jeffrey Allman. I'm not sure why I delete that once. I think that is this one. So I'm going to, here, let's say, yeah, that is the textbook of this. Well, actually, it's not a textbook, references. And meeting, this course is online, async, which means we do not meet. But however, I want to meet you at least once. So our face-to-face kickoff meeting is over Zoom, scheduled third Wednesday of this course, which is February the 4th at 7 o'clock. So please plan to join me on Zoom so we can say hi and some of the logistics and technical difficulties to someone, not to most of our students. But I know some students may having the problems uh, first multiple weeks, which is no good. Usually, if you do not join the kickoff meetings, then you miss that part, and also you do not review the recordings. Therefore, you fall away. Uh, so do not try to come back and check out the recordings. But if you want to, I, I want you to join on that Zoom so that we can talk interactively That is important. I know some of you has some work schedule. Therefore, I scheduled here earlier. So I think you can adjust, you can accommodate this, right? Format of this course is, of course, online. Um, these things will be guided on our uh, kickoff meetings. Participations here and assignments. This course requires a lots of assignments. Uh, the most important thing is that you submit the homework assignments on time or before the deadline. Late submission will incur a 10% penalty per day. So technically, if you submit 10 days later, then uh, you don't get any, right? That's what I want you to be aware of. This course requires a project, so we'll get to that attachment, which is the end of this syllabus, so you can find it. There's no exam, but homework assignments 55%, project 40%. Okay, so project is important, and also homework assignments. Something good news is that there's no written test, which is good, right? I like that. Not all the time. All right, this is my cell number if you want to contact me, but do not call me. And also, reason I am releasing my cell number for you to use is not to talk any other things, but course related, but any in detail. But you can tell me, hey, I am in IASP 520. Would you be able to check my email? So your email, okay, the other one is, I want you to use Blackboard email. Please do not send any course-related questions and emails to my regular emails. So please do that on Blackboard. The main reason for that is uh, anything that we correspond uh, will remain and will be stored, saved for a long time. I would say multiple years, at least 4 or 5 years. If you send it to me on my regular email, uh, the quota assigned to my regular email is not big enough to hold uh, many emails, particularly if there is an attachment. Yeah, definitely not. So I may not be able to get it. So, and also I want to store everything that we talk within the Blackboard for many reasons. Okay. All right. All others I want you to read because it's very straightforward. Many of them is a boilerless statements, which is the legal statements. Almost all the former from the university. Course schedule. So I allocated the topics for many weeks. Um, the homeworks will be given to you, of course. And today, a little bit of introduction to this course. We start the course slowly and then later moving fast. And then next week, we'll cover machine learning, introduction to machine learning, which doesn't have any particular hands-on exercises yet. It'll come. And the third week, which we will have our kickoff meeting, right? That day. Anyway, this is an online asynchronous, so everything will be. Hold on, I think this is maybe dying, so I'm going to change my audio. This 10% remains. I'm going to finish it up. Great. We'll start with, for the purpose of coding, Python coding will be reviewed for 1 week. After that, on this exercise, practice, and implementations are not starting from scratch, but we're going to import something already well established and very useful and very powerful. One of those is pandas. So we're going to work on pandas and some of the more stuffs. And then fifth week, we're going to handling data. So multiple ways that we can collect the data. And then after that, we are looking at some of the component technologies and algorithmic approaches. For example, associated rule mining, classification and clustering, and machine learning, neural network. And um, and also we switch to OpenAI, but rather than OpenAI, you have to subscribe to it, which means you have to pay. I don't want you to pay. Rather, we're going to do some other machine learning exercises without OpenAI. But we will do similar things. For example, Meta has Llama 4.0, 3.0, the model tools, model engines available. So using that model engines, so we're going to import a specific model to make something to learn and improve. Okay, that's what we will do. And then lastly, we have a project presentation. All right. So project. So this course requires a project. So what we need to do is some of the requirements. So size of data, as it says at least 1,000 instances, 1,000 rows, 1,000 records, and then which means, and then there are 8 to 10 attributes. We call that features. Columns, 8 to 10 columns, and 1,000 rows. That type of data will be okay for your project. And then type of the data, I mean, source of data that you can get. This is a very old repositories, University of California, Irvine. Irvine. Or you can get many from Kaggle data sets. This is very, very well known, and some others, right? New York City has some of the data repositories. A lot more than this, so you can get some of those wherever you can. Once you have that, then make sure that has these dimensions. And then I wanted to explain what that data is, okay? And then tools that you can use, pandas, NumPy, Matplot, scikit-learn. All of these will be used in this class so much times. So you don't have any problem with this. But you can, if you want to, you can include more as you wish. By the way, PyTorch, we are going to use a lot also. And coding experience, you need to prepare the data, and data needs to be analyzed. Also, you have to explain this on your report. And model developments. Some of the models that you do, for example, logistic regression, decision trees, random forest, SVM, K-means, hierarchical clusterings, neural network, and more. Most of those will be discussed in this class. Model evaluations, this tells you whether it is good or not. For example, ROC or RMSR, as if some of the error evaluations or confusion matrix. Again, many of these, most of those are also handled in our the class exercises and some other additions. So as you play with the data, then there is a expected learning and actual learning. So before the project and then after the completing of that project. So you need to identify that. Okay. And deliverables, written reports. This is important. And then coding list, and then final presentation. This is a verbal presentations. If we do not meet, I ask you to submit your recordings, your verbal and screen videos, everything that you can exploit your work more effectively and efficiently. Therefore, you don't lose any credits. You need to, by presenting your work, you need to make your audience well understood. Evaluation creation criteria, as we listed here. So data set selections, data preparations, visualizations, model selection, evaluation and interpretations, code quality, and then some of the discussions, and then finally presentations. Okay, this is it. I think this is the detailed description about the syllabus. So, but as over the course of time, you can see more clearly. In this class, and when you come back to the kickoff meeting, then you will be able to see. So our work place is a Jupyter Notebook on Google Colab. Jupyter Notebook itself is not accepted, so you have to, homework assignments needs to be submitted in Python file only, not the notebook format, but Python format. We'll get to that point later. This is something that I wanted to do to review. All right.
The truth is, it's probably not possible to satisfactorily condense 12 months worth of weird progress in AI, as well as predictions for the year to come, into just one video. To be honest, I'm going to try anyway because it has been a very strange time. We are mid-singularity for some people and pre-bubble burst for others, but wherever you are on that spectrum, here's my 10 takeaways from 2025 as someone who does little other than follow AI, plus 5 things we can confidently anticipate in 2026. 2025 was always going to be the year of reasoning models that take longer to think and spend more tokens doing so. That led, of course, most famously with Gemini 3 Pro to benchmark after benchmark being beaten, but inevitably also skepticism about the inherent value of benchmarks being beaten. But frankly, just the fact that whatever test you or I or the industry can create, AI models can soon surpass is itself a fascinating phenomenon. Yes, This model aptitude is jagged or spiky, but man, those spikes are getting pretty impressive, whether it comes to video understanding, chart table analysis, coding, or general knowledge and reasoning. This is the same year, though, that we caught glimpses of a flaw in that paradigm, that thinking longer may boost accuracy, but reduce diversity of outputs. By browbeating base models until they can beat benchmarks, we are ensuring that the first answer a model gives, as shown in yellow here, is much more likely to be smart. But this 2025 paradigm does not seem to be producing reasoning paths that weren't already present in that base model and couldn't have been found if you sample that base model enough times. But the thinking longer approach isn't everything. There's also scaling up the parameters and data that go into that base model, and we have seen rich rewards from that approach. Here's Demis Hassabis speaking just the other week.
We're recording now, Gemini 3 has just been released, and it's leading on this whole range of different benchmarks. How has that been possible? Like, wasn't there supposed to be a problem with scaling hitting a wall?
I think a lot of people thought that, especially as other companies have sort of had slower progress, shall we say. But I think we've never really seen any wall as such. Like, what I would say is maybe there's like diminishing returns. And people, when I say that, people only think like, oh, so there's no returns, like it's 0 or 1. It's either exponential or nothing, or it's asymptotic. No, actually, there's a lot of room between those two regimes, and I think we're in between those. So it's not like you're going to double the performance on all the benchmarks every time you release a new iteration. Maybe that's what was happening in the very early days, 3-4 years ago. But you are getting significant improvements, like we've seen with Gemini 3, that are well worth the investment and the return on that investment and doing. So that we haven't seen any slowdown on.
My second major takeaway from 2025, of course, relates to Genie 3 and how the world will soon be playable. Announced in August by Google DeepMind, Genie 3 is a model that can generate dynamic worlds from just a text prompt or perhaps an image you feed to it. And that world isn't completely ephemeral. It retains consistency for a few minutes at a time at 720p resolution. In other words, you could take a photo, let Genie 3 turn that into a playable world, carve your initials into a tree inside that world, and return a few minutes later to see your initials still there. Of course, whether you think this is going to lead to the most epic games ever or a whole new swathe of people retreating into their own virtual worlds is up to you. Whatever you believe, my third takeaway from 2025 is that inevitably those worlds are going to get more and more realistic. Just this year, we got VO 3.1, Sora 2, Nano Banana Pro, as well as incredible text-to-speech and text-to-music models. These are all incredibly fun, of course, but my fourth takeaway is that AI slop has officially gone mainstream and isn't going anywhere. Two quick examples, because I'm sure you guys have hundreds of your own, but I got recommended in my feed this video, which as of now has 2.4 million views. And it's this, sad tale of a 73-year-old guy giving his life lessons. Thing is, it's all AI generated. That hasn't stopped hundreds of thousands of people being fooled though and giving comments as if this is a real video. Fine, he or it might be giving good life lessons, but what happens to a world where no one can trust what they're watching, what they're hearing? Another way of putting it is that in 2024, the top comment on a video like this with the technology at the time would have been, "This is AI, rubbish." Whereas in 2025, it's just people pouring out their heart in response, not realizing / not caring for some people that it is all AI generated, even the script. The second anecdote being this video sent to me by a close family member, and again, of course, it's all AI generated, about Trump ending NATO. This family member thought that the video was real, and what's more, I talk to him all the time about AI and deepfakes, so it's hard to make someone immune. My fifth takeaway was that there was so much great and encouraging AI news that wasn't necessarily related to the latest frontier model. I could have picked any of 100 examples, but take Dolphin Gemma, a large language model developed by Google to decode dolphin language, essentially. It's still being refined, of course, as they feed it more and more data, but this is the kind of project I think we could all get behind. A model that can recognize these signature whistles or unique names that are used by mothers and calves to reunite is, of course, a model that could emit, in token form at least, those same whistles and potentially summon such dolphins. My sixth takeaway is that people's desire for such progress is finally balanced with their kind of hatred for AI slop overall. This is perhaps why a survey done in the summer on Americans showed that the net rating for AI overall is positive just about. 2,300 Americans were asked, please say whether you believe the overall impact of AI on society is positive or negative. And we had 8% more people saying positive. Mind you, being only 1 percentage point higher than social media is somewhat worrying. Now that survey factors in the overall impression, but specifically on AI art, the picture is far less positive. Here in the UK, the government has a plan to make it opt out for artists. In other words, they have to actively say that they don't want their work to be used for training AI models. Only 3% of the UK public. The truth is, it's probably not possible to satisfactorily condense 12 believe the overall impact of AI on society is positive or negative. And we have entire documentaries on this, so I'm going to keep it short. But AI has basically been enlisted this year in governments the world over. From outrage in Sweden because their prime minister uses ChatGPT to help him in his role, to US senators admitting that they use Grok to analyze aspects of the big beautiful bill, Gen AI in the military, of course, which is its own video, and of course government entities using generative AI models to find efficiencies to very mixed effect. A lot of this, being honest, relates to how smart many thought models would be by now, but that's for the second half of this video. Instead of just a bunch of confusing news, I hope you end this video with at least one framework of how to understand AI and how it's progressing. Because of course, if you just look at the headlines, it can be incredibly misleading. You're like, it's going to lead to the elimination of all jobs, but wait, it makes horrific mistakes. What on earth is going on? My eighth takeaway concerns GPT-5. Which, if we're being honest, is the model that was probably the most looked forward to in 2025. Sam Altman, I believe, misunderstood, and I've got the reason why in a moment, but I think he misunderstood that model before he released it. He said GPT-5 is the first time it really feels like talking to an expert in any topic, like a PhD level expert. And in the live stream launch of that model, he said, again, it's a legitimate PhD level expert in anything, any area you need. But the mistake there is thinking that there's just a single axis of intelligence, and being PhD level on certain exams in one area means it's not going to make trivial mistakes elsewhere. As people have of course found with GPT-5, 5.1, 5.2, and indeed all other language models, those basic hallucinations remain. As I said at the time with my GPT-5 video, that doesn't mean that hundreds of millions of people won't experience an overall smarter model. Back in February, it was 400 million people using ChatGPT every week. Now it's closer to 900 million people. But one of the biggest stories of the year was just how far certain model providers are willing to go to make their models appealing to users. We had OpenAI briefly making GPT-4o incredibly sycophantic. Even someone saying, I've stopped taking all my medications and I left my family because I know they were responsible for the radio signals coming in through the walls. To which GPT-4o said, seriously, good for you for standing up for yourself and taking control of your life. We had Meta accused of almost purely optimizing for user preference to get crazy high benchmark preference scores, but then releasing a different model as Llama 4. It seems to most people that this approach went so badly that Meta scrapped that entire approach and had to rebuild from scratch their superintelligence unit. Of course, we'll see in 2026 if that produces results. Even though GPT-5 didn't go down as well as Sam Altman might have hoped, there were some quiet successes along the way for OpenAI, like GPT 4.5 passing the Turing test. This happened in April to quite little fanfare actually, where humans couldn't tell that they were speaking to GPT 4.5. On balance, they couldn't tell it apart from just another human typing out a response. One thing that did give some strange vibes about OpenAI's approach was them having to almost justify how they're going to get future revenue in a post from just a week ago. It does seem like a mixed sign when a company publicly relies on the correlation between the compute that feeds their models and the revenue that comes out. Yes, that has been the correlation and probable causation so far, but that doesn't mean that will continue indefinitely. Why? Because, well, ninth, we have seen the dogged increase in performance of Chinese and other open weight models. Even on my own private benchmark, Simple Bench, testing trick questions and common sense reasoning, a Chinese model released in the last 24 hours, GLM 4.7, got a score that would have been state of the art around 9 months ago. Yes, OpenAI and Google DeepMind and Anthropic keep innovating and still hold top spots. but they do seem to be on that hamster wheel where they have to keep innovating. Even if we just have a pause in innovation for 6 or 12 months, Chinese models could catch up, and a lot of that API and consumer spend could switch to cheaper models from China. Or maybe Google and OpenAI have to reduce their prices to stop people switching and reduce their profit margins. For coding and question answering, no Chinese model has quite made it into my top 4 as judged by the council I use for lmcouncil.ai. But for image generation, they certainly have, with Seedream in particular and their 4.5 model really getting quite close. Seedream 4.5 for me is still in 3rd place, but is not too far behind Nano Banana Pro or GPT Image 1.5 released just the other week. One thing I would say is that even if you don't care about Chinese models being significantly cheaper, you can never fully write off the open source community, because it's not just the Chinese model providers that we're talking about. NVIDIA, that giant, have released fully open source Nemotron 3. Now, for sure, it's not the smartest model out there, but this was just December 15th, and Nemotron Ultra, 16 times larger, is being released soon, according to them. Not just that, it's fully open source, including the training data that goes into the model. Again, this 9th takeaway isn't about Chinese models or NVIDIA catching up, it's them staying in the race. And what them staying in the race means is that one slip up from the frontier, just 6 or 9 months of little progress, could mean profit margins shrinking rapidly. I don't think that's going to happen, but it must keep lab leaders up at night. The 10th takeaway is the breakout performance of the Meter Time Horizons benchmark. You may have thought I was going to say the breakout performance of Claude Opus 4.5 on that benchmark. No, I mean the benchmark as a whole. Grading models on how long it takes humans to complete the tasks that models can complete successfully half the time. That may sound confusing, but to give an example, albeit with colossal error bars, Claude Opus 4.5 can half the time successfully complete tasks that it takes humans almost 5 hours to complete. I can barely get models to spend more than 5 minutes on my problems. Maybe they're too easy. This chart has been cited in all sorts of governmental analyses and AI 2027 projections and debates about the future of AI. I have had more than one lengthy discussion with more than one of the authors of this benchmark, so I want to give it some context. First, it's drawn from 3 benchmarks focused on coding and machine learning engineering tasks. This is not a generalized measure of AI intelligence. Second, as A1 Mr. Gold points out on Substack, the further along you get in the meter plot, the more you're relying on a weaker and weaker signal. For example, when you're looking at the 1 to 4 hour range on the meter plot, it is drawn from only 14 samples. That also leads to the massive error bars with a 95% confidence interval of between 1 hour 49 minutes to 20 hours, 25 minutes. There's also actually a slightly bigger sample size at the higher end towards 16-hour long tasks, which led to the weird phenomena of Claude actually getting some of those right, but not the 2 to 4 hour long tasks. Also, as I noted back in March, that is again based on the average human duration for completing those tasks, but that varies wildly. Meter found that contractors took 5 to 18 times longer to fix issues than repo maintainers. I could do many more, but there is a third bit of context I'd want to give you before you extrapolate too much from this graph. This period of time between 2020 and the truth is probably, and I was like, what the hell is going on? And I used Gemini 3 to upskill avatar moving their head was incredible. Check this out. Claude Opus 4.0 higher end towards 60.
And sometimes everything happens all at once and you just
higher odds of writing a feasible protocol, almost 5 times as much, than a group using frontier models to write experimental protocols for viral recovery, had significantly higher odds of writing a feasible protocol, almost 5 times as much, than a group using the internet alone. This belies that myth that, oh, you could just Google it before, nothing's changed. Obviously, this particular study has safety implications because we don't necessarily want everyone to be able to create a virus, for example. But again, just for me, the fact you have access to a very imperfect model in any domain is itself remarkable. Just the other week, the back doors of my car wouldn't open after an MOT, and I was like, what the hell is going on? And I used Gemini 3 to figure out that they'd put on the child lock for the back doors. It also told me how to unlock those doors by looking at a latch inside the door, which I would have never found. Obviously, the model is not as good as the best mechanic, but I didn't have access to the best mechanic that evening. Well, likewise across any domain. The other day, I interviewed the founder of Sunday Robotics for Patreon, Tony Zhao, because in November, they produced one of the robotics demos of the year in my mind, loading a dishwasher with fragile wine glasses. Their memo robot is scheduled for deployment in 2026, and you might say, well, I wouldn't trust them with my wine glasses, but they may also soon be able to make a bed. Obviously not as well as the best bed maker, but you might not care about having the best. Even a decently made bed might be good enough for you. Okay, so my next framework for 2026 is a bit harder to convey, but I'm just going to try my best. A good chunk actually of this video has been building up to this example, because to see where AI is going in 2026, you have to have an opinion about the generality of our current methods. Let's imagine for a moment that you trained a robot on all of the internet's data, literally everything, videos, audio, everything. Let's say the model inside of it has a quadrillion parameters with scaled up to the absolute max. Well, for the true believers, scale is all you need. It's just a central axis of general intelligence. So you could give the robot a task like, can you pick up the cup? And the model, having understood all the patterns latent in all of that data, would proceed to do so elegantly and excellently. You can almost think of this as the single axis camp. Generality of intelligence as a single knob you can dial. Dario Amodei of Anthropic is, I believe, in this camp, or at least was, and Ilya Sutskever definitely was, but no longer is. For Sutskever, formerly chief scientist of OpenAI, training a model to predict the next word would force it to encapsulate so many patterns latent in the data. For example, if the final sentence of a book was, "and the murderer is," to successfully predict the next word, the model would have to have incredible general intelligence, understand human emotions and intentions, and decipher socioeconomic statistics and everything. Now, by the way, he doesn't believe that, saying that the generalization of models is actually inadequate. There's a disconnect between eval performance and actual real-world performance. If, like Amodei, though, you're more drawn to that singular axis approach, then it makes sense to just extrapolate the curves forward.
But now getting to kind of the job side of this, I do have a fair amount of concern about this. On one hand, I think comparative advantage is a very powerful tool. If I look at coding, programming, which is one area where AI is making the most progress, what we are finding is we are not far from a world, I think we'll be there in 3 to 6 months, where AI is writing 90% of the code. And then in 12 months, we may be in a world where AI is writing essentially all of the code.
This intelligence ratchet, if you will, is what's modeled in AI 2027, the report studied by, among others, J.D. Vance. But let's go back to my robot analogy, because what would happen if the robot doesn't pick up the cup? Or at least doesn't do so well? Maybe it picks it up, but it does so slowly and very jerkily.
It's making it more effective. You have the GDP val things we talked about. One thing you don't have is the ability for the model to not be able to do something today, realize it can't, go off and figure out how to learn to get good at that thing, learn to understand it, and when you come back the next day, it gets it right. And that kind of continuous learning, like toddlers can do it. It does seem to me like an important part didn't change the world.
The Neanderthals, because we could communicate better. We had more nuanced language. We could pass on tips and stories from one. An LLM plus automated tests, and how about the first improvement of a particular algorithm for 56 years? Intelligence point of view, because did you know that LLMs can get brain rot by reading Twitter influencer material? Yes, there's literally a paper on that. The results providing significant multi-perspective evidence that data quality could be modeled and improved. I, for one, really look forward to the day where models just got me a lot better. Then there are the coding improvements that I find really hard to put into words. Yes, as Andrej Karpathy says, we are still in that world of jagged capabilities. But as someone who uses these models daily, the sheer improvement in reliability and quality from January to December is incredible. So that's my take. A much more fulsome video than I was planning on making, but I'd love to know what you guys think.
All right, this is what I prepared for the first the class of this semester. All other details will be discussed from the second week. All right. Second week course material is not going to be recorded. Only the slides were posted so that you can read it. And on the third week, I will come back and record my lecture again and post it. All right? Okay. Thank you. Talk to you later. Goodbye.